A question here, to lighten it up, but a serious one. A serious one. What is your position on backyard chickens? We'll just start with
Erin, now who asked that question? I wonder who asked that question.
We'll start at the far end and just quickly work our way. Ms. Mosby?
Yes. That's funny. I was just in council on Monday when the chicken thing was coming up. And I was enlightened that we don't need a rooster for the chicken to have the egg, and I said, wow, okay. That's a doozy there. I'm gonna have to tell you that because can't tell you, I'm too short on the chicken beside me, so I'm going to have to, that one I'm going to have to rely on, that I know council has a voting process, that we're going to hold votes in your direction on that one, because I'm not ready yet for the chicken question. I'm sorry. Not ready. Not ready.
It's funny that question has come up because I had someone in my district to ask that question. There's been some problems in their neighborhood with residents owning chickens in the backyard, and that's something that we need to bring public involvement, participation in that process to really address that issue. Because I really wasn't aware that we had a problem with chickens in the city, but I guess in the south side, because we were in that city, I can see why it's a problem, but I would encourage public participation in that decision-making process.
Ms. Delp?
I 100% support chickens in the city. I cannot wait until I can have chickens in the city. Georgia has been a front runner in the urban garden, urban farming, yes, for a while, and all of their public health reports that have come out have suggested that chickens are safe and healthy and can be kept very well within city limits. So, yes, I support urban chickens.
Ms. Shewmake?
Yes, I'll add a caveat with well-phrased legislation attached to it. I have a little concern about from the animal welfare perspective. But for anybody that's interested, my neighborhood is actually hosting a forum October 18th at Woodland Heights Baptist Church from 7 to 8. That's on the corner of West 31st and Spring Hill. Come on out. We're going to have the chickens group there. We're going to have veterinarians there, as well as people who have owned chickens. So if you have questions, need some information, come on out. And my neighborhood's going to vote that night on their formal decision. So.
Okay. Mr. Jewell?
Well, again, I try to listen to my residents and the folks in my district. But I haven't heard more than 3 people in opposition to backyard chickens. This thing's been going on since last year in front of council. So it's not new to us. I'm a country boy from Goochland County, Madigan. We raise chickens. I fed chickens. I hate chickens. I'm a country boy from Goochland. Now, the young lady mentioned the fact that there are a lot of people who don't know that you don't have to have a rooster for a hen to lay an egg. We're not talking about roosters. Roosters would be banned because at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, they make a lot of noise. But on a more serious note, y'all, just 35 miles away from here, we had an earthquake in Louisiana. It could have been here. It could have been worse. What should happen if something catastrophic should occur and we don't have the ability to feed ourselves? That's why urban gardens make sense. That's why, oh, you laugh. You laugh. But when that refrigerator goes up and that pack of chicken you got in your freezer goes bad, you ain't eating that chicken. That one with flopping their wings outside. So yeah, I support backyard chickens under certain terms and conditions, provided that it does not, that we can craft legislation that does not impose harshly on neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. Mr. Hart?
And I would go with that.
Concur.
Is that you would have to make sure that, you know, we can't just look up and there, because I've seen this. Y'all think I'm lying. I've looked up and there was a chicken running down my road and I was like, no, we're not in the city. We're in the city. So you would have to make sure that you have a certain way that you keep these chickens and some type of legislation on it. There has to be a streamlined process. This is it. This is what you have to have. If you don't have this, then you can't have it. That's what I would say.
Mr. Walker?
Yeah, I'm like Marty. Marty's a country boy. I'm a city boy. So I'd have to study this a little more. I really couldn't give you an answer right now. I don't know enough about it to answer.
Mr. Ryan?
I'm in favor of baked chicken, fried chicken, and grilled chicken, a chicken sandwich. Now, Marty, we have some neighbors that have chicken. Ellen, there's people in 6th District and collecting signatures, they put me in the backyard chicken. And they asked me, what do you think of chicken? You know, people have dogs, they have cats, people have snakes and rats, and whoever knows what they have. I think the biggest thing is, if there's a noise ordinance or an ordinance against road chickens running down the road, yeah, I mean, if you're respectful of your neighbors, I think it should be fine.
Mr. Sanders?
Those of us on council have a little bit of an unfair advantage with this question. Earlier this year, I sponsored legislation instructing the administration to make recommendations on how to allow urban hens. And they just came back last Monday night with those recommendations. So we may have, it may be a little bit of an unfair question at this point for us to really dig into the policy of it. They have made recommendations that would make it safe, that would make the coop safe, that would require inspections. There was some concern from the advocates of the urban hen group that it was a high licensing fee. The administration also recommended putting a limit on the number of licenses as well as the total number of hens any one person or property could own. I think there is an ability to make the rules less restrictive than they are now. But this is another great example of consensus building. It's not, we're going to let them in, period. It's not, we're absolutely opposed to it. It's, we have to work with our communities. I'll tell you, I get about a 50-50 split in the 2nd District for and against. While I'm personally not opposed to it, I do have to represent the entirety of my district and not any one special interest group. That's why you have to start with building consensus, working up from there, get the community buy-in before anything at the city level can take place. I do have to say that the chickens have been incredibly patient, vocal, and very willing to educate people on how to safely raise urban hens. And now for the fun fact of the night for Charles Samuels, apart from the zoning codes, the only other animal that's majorly or significantly limited are cows. And if you are walking your cow down a city street, you do have to have a bell around its neck. It's a city code, I kid you not.
Mr. Hilbert?
Yes, thank you. I was at a Virginia Planning Association meeting earlier this year, and there was not one but 2 sessions on urban hens. And so I think that would be helpful to call this urban hens as opposed to urban chickens, because then you have to go back and explain to people that registers are prohibited. They're out there now. I tell you that. I haven't seen one personally, but people tell me that they're there in the city now. So they're out there now, they're being unregulated. I think we need to bring them under regulation. And I got an email the other day from a constituent, and when you're listening, that's when you're learning. And he told me, a young man and his wife and their young child, and he said, he was in his late 20s, he said, I'm looking at this, and people in my generation are looking at this as a livability issue. And so we're talking about attracting more people into the city and a new generation. It seems like to me that we need to allow this, but we need to do it in a restrictive way, I believe, to try and make sure that we're doing this in a systematic way and not throwing it out there and trying to retract part of it later. I really want to think this through. I think we have, and I, like Mr. Samuels, I do want to say that I think the way that the folks, the Urban Hen advocates have gone about doing this. They've been lobbying us. They have not been disrespectful and coming down to city council and calling us all crooks and et cetera. They've really been great about it, and obviously in their face, and I think they've been effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler.
It's kind of interesting. I've been watching and listening and talking with constituents, and I've had several constituents lobby me to allow chickens in their backyards. And then I've had phone calls from folks calling me and saying 3:34 in the afternoon, complaining about the fact that 6 doors down there's a chicken coop. And so I've had to deal with the noise issue already, even before it started. I have not studied the report thoroughly. We got a quick briefing on it Monday night. And I think there are a couple issues that we have to address before we just jump in on this discussion. The first is we've got to make sure that there are no health risks associated with this. It is critical. The second thing we have to do is we have to make sure that if we're going to regulate them, that we have a way to do it that is far more effective than what we're currently doing with other situations that we have in the city with regards to animals, and particularly dogs and cats. We've had a lot of issues where recently where someone was bit, they didn't have the proper paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. So if we're going to get into this, we're going to have to make sure it's done properly. I like the fact that the administration wants to limit the first year to 200 to see how it goes. So if in fact it makes sense, okay. But at the end of the day, we've got to make sure it's safe for the public before we jump into this.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Ms. Robertson.
I'd just like to say, there's only been one question tonight that every one of us has been asked to answer. It's the least important. And it's about chickens. One thing Marty, Jewell, and I share in common.
One thing.
We're both from the country.
Oh, okay.
And from the same country, mannequins, Sept, Virginia. And you know what? If we do it right, we live in the city. And people that live in the city like different kinds of things. We've had a lot of folk knocking on our doors for this, which means there's a huge interest. Our obligation and our responsibility is to make sure that it's what the majority of the citizens want, and also that we put the regulations in place to make sure that it's healthy and that we have good control over it. So, you know what? I had chickens when I was kids and big fun. So, I don't have no opposition, but it's really good.
Thank you. Mr. Angelasto.
I might actually have only parents that have 40 chickens that I get as many eggs as I want. So I've got my supply, but I do think that what the current council members are saying is that there's currently a set of recommendations, and it would be nice as non-council people to get those recommendations as citizens so that we can begin to assess whether they meet the criteria for citizen comment. I would certainly say that I support the thoughtful implementation of urban chickens. At the same time, however, there's time and place for everything. I'm not quite sure some of our new condos would be the right place for chickens. I'm also wanting to make sure that, we're looking at other impacts of chickens. There are certain feral cat colonies in neighborhoods that are huge. And what would that do if there was chicken and feed available for feral cat? There's also rats and other issues in certain neighborhoods to address. But I agree with Ellen. Unfortunately, this is the only question that I've been able to answer.
Mr. Diradour.
I'm not going to waste anybody's time. Under the current, under the right circumstances, yes, I would support it.
Okay. And speaking of food and environmental issues, there's a question here about food deserts. So in the 3rd district,